The DMV clerk's face changed when she scanned my license. Her friendly efficiency froze into something careful and strange. She glanced at her computer screen, then at me, then back at the screen like she was comparing two different people. "Ma'am, could you step to the side for a moment?" Her voice dropped to a whisper as she motioned toward the security desk. My pulse hammered in my throat. I'd just come to renew my license, a mundane Tuesday errand during my lunch break. Now a security guard was walking toward me with a concerned expression. "There's a flag on your record," the clerk whispered as I gathered my paperwork. "Missing person case. The reporting party is listed as Patricia Quinn." Patricia Quinn. My mother. My hands went cold. The clerk continued quietly, "There's also an insurance notation attached to the case. I need to get my supervisor." I stood there in the DMV waiting area, surrounded by people complaining about wait times and failed eye tests, while my brain tried to process what I'd just heard. My mother had reported me missing. And apparently, there was insurance involved. The security guard walked me to a back office, a small cubicle that smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. A supervisor handed me a printed copy of the flag notation. Case number, filing date, my mother's name as reporting party. My name is Tessa Quinn. I'm 32 years old. I work as a medical billing specialist at a healthcare network downtown. I live alone in a studio apartment. I'm not missing. I've never been missing. "I need the police contact information for this case," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And a copy of everything you just showed me." The supervisor printed documents while I tried to understand what was happening. My mother and I hadn't spoken in 6 months, not since Thanksgiving when she'd called me ungrateful and selfish in front of my entire extended family. But reporting me missing? My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Ms. Quinn. This is Carolyn Vega from Aurora Mutual Insurance, Special Investigations Unit. We need to discuss a claim filed on your life insurance policy." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The Thanksgiving memory hit me like a physical blow. My mother had hosted at her house, the way she always did, orchestrating everything like a performance. She'd spent the entire meal talking about her business seminars, her success coaching clients, her vision for helping people unlock their potential. When she'd asked me to skip my volunteer shift at the community clinic to attend one of her seminars instead, I'd politely declined. I already committed to the clinic, I'd explained. She'd called me ungrateful. Right there at the dinner table, in front of my cousins and aunts and uncles. Said I was selfish, that I didn't appreciate everything she'd done for me, that I'd always put strangers before family. My cousins had laughed uncomfortably. I'd cleared plates in silence, swallowing humiliation with cranberry sauce. Only my grandmother had squeezed my hand as I'd collected dishes. "Keep what's true," she'd whispered. "Let the rest go." I'd left that night and hadn't contacted my mother since. 6 months of silence. And now this. Back at work, I sat at my desk surrounded by the familiar comfort of electronic health records, audit logs, payer edits, and ICD-10 coding crosswalks. Medical billing was detail work, precision work. Numbers and codes that had definitive meanings. My head always cleared in data. Carolyn Vega from Aurora Mutual called back within an hour. "Ms. Quinn, I need to record a statement if you're willing. Can you confirm whether you designated your mother, Patricia Quinn, as the beneficiary on your life insurance policy?" I had an old policy from a college job, I explained slowly. I was 24 when I filled out that form. I didn't think much about it. But I changed beneficiaries last year on my current policy through my employer. I named my grandmother. Can you provide documentation of that change? Yes. I have the confirmation email and the date-stamped form from HR. There was a pause. "Ms. Quinn, your mother filed a missing person report 3 weeks ago claiming you disappeared. She also submitted a claim on what appears to be that old policy from your college employer, which was never formally closed." My hands were shaking. I've been at work every day. I've been living my normal life. "I believe you," Carolyn said. But we need documentation. Everything you can provide. I found the old HR form that night, digging through boxes in my closet. Employee paperwork from the medical supply company where I'd worked part-time during college, 8 years ago. There it was, beneficiary designation, Patricia Quinn, my mother. I'd filled it out without thinking, the way 24-year-olds do, assuming nothing would ever happen. I'd left that job 6 years ago when I'd moved to my current position. The policy had apparently continued as a small-term life benefit I'd forgotten existed. I'd never updated the beneficiary because I'd never thought about that old policy again. My current employer's policy, the substantial one with actual value, I'd updated last year. Changed the beneficiary to my grandmother after a health scare made me think about these things seriously. I had the confirmation email, date stamped and saved. I scanned everything and emailed it to Carolyn at Aurora Mutual. Then I sat on my apartment floor and tried to understand what my mother was doing. The math was simple and horrifying: report me missing, wait for presumed death declaration, collect insurance money. The detective's email arrived the next morning. He'd attached a copy of the missing person report my mother had filed. Reading it felt like watching someone describe a stranger. According to her statement, I'd stormed out of her house during a family gathering without my wallet or phone. She'd listed a friend named Christy Hampton as the last person to see me, someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. She'd implied I was having a mental health crisis and might be in danger. None of it was true. I'd left Thanksgiving dinner with my wallet, my phone, my car keys. I'd driven home, ordered food delivery, and gone to work the next day. Heat built behind my eyes, not tears but rage. My mother was lying to police, using my name, manipulating the system. I replied to the detective's email immediately. I need badge swipe access logs and security camera footage from my apartment building for the dates in question. I can prove I was home, at work, living my normal routine. The detective responded within an hour, working on it. Sit tight. My apartment building's facilities manager sent the records 2 days later. Badge swipe logs showing me entering the building at 8:13 p.m. on the night my mother claimed I'd disappeared. Security camera stills from the lobby showing me walking in with a Grubhub delivery bag, timestamp bright as a flare. I'd been home. Eating pad thai and watching Netflix. Not missing. Not in crisis. Just living. I forwarded everything to Carolyn at Aurora Mutual and copied the detective. Carolyn called back within minutes. Ms. Quinn, this is extremely helpful. I need your permission to share these with the detective and with our legal counsel. Your mother's claim is looking increasingly fraudulent. You have my permission, I said. My voice sounded cold and distant, like I was talking about someone else's life. Share whatever you need. I went back to work, processing medical claims, correcting billing codes, doing the methodical work that kept me grounded. But my mind kept circling back to one question: how far was my mother willing to take this? The affidavits arrived in my inbox that evening, forwarded by Carolyn. 2 sworn statements from my mother's friends, both claiming they'd witnessed my erratic behavior and concerning statements before my supposed disappearance. I read them carefully, the way I'd been trained to review medical documentation for inconsistencies. And there they were, the statements read like twins. Same sentence structure. Same comma placement. Same unusual phrases. Patient exhibited concerning behavioral patterns. Subject made statements inconsistent with rational thought. Nobody talked like that in casual witness statements. These had been written by the same person using the same template. I forwarded them to Carolyn with a single line: notice the identical language structure? She replied within an hour: our fraud analyst flagged the same thing. Template detected. We're building a case. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sick. My mother had recruited friends to lie under oath. She'd orchestrated multiple false statements. This wasn't impulse or confusion. This was premeditated fraud. I filed an identity theft report the next day. Not to press charges against my mother, not yet. Just to anchor the timeline, to create an official record that someone had misused my information without permission. Calm beats fury, I'd learned that in my work. Emotional reactions got nowhere. Documentation and precision won disputes. The police report gave me a case number, another piece of the evidence chain. The detective called afterward. "Ms. Quinn, I'm scheduling a follow-up with your mother. The insurance investigator wants to be present. This case is moving toward closure, but we need to tie up the false report issue." "What happens to her?" I asked. "That depends. Filing a false police report is a crime. Insurance fraud is a bigger crime. But prosecution depends on multiple factors including intent, cooperation, and whether she withdraws the claim." I thanked him and went back to work. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. A neighbor texted me a photo that evening. The church bulletin from my mother's congregation. There, in the prayer request section, "Pray for Patricia Quinn, whose daughter is missing and presumed in danger." I stared at the photo for a long time. My mother had taken this public. She was performing grief for an audience, collecting sympathy and prayers for a tragedy that didn't exist. I took a breath and went back to my laptop. Opened my work files. Processed insurance claims. Let the fury dissolve into focus. My landlord called an hour later. "Hey Tessa," the detective asked for our security camera logs. I sent everything. "Also, just so you know, you signed for 3 packages that week your mom claimed you disappeared. Want me to send those records too?" "Yes please," I said. "Send everything." Every piece of documentation was another nail. Another timestamp. Another proof of normal life continuing while my mother spun her fiction. My mother called my supervisor at work. I found out when HR summoned me to a meeting the next afternoon. "Your mother contacted us claiming you're mentally unstable and might pose a risk to yourself," the HR director explained gently. "She said she's concerned about your welfare and wanted us to do a wellness check." My face burned with humiliation. "I'm not unstable. I'm fine." "She's lying." "We know," the HR director said quickly. "Your attendance is perfect. Your work is excellent. We documented her call and closed it as unfounded. But we wanted you to know it happened." She paused. "We'd like to offer you access to our employee assistance program. Not because we think you need it, but because you're dealing with a difficult family situation. And honestly, for documentation purposes. If this escalates, having EAP records showing you sought support voluntarily could be helpful." I took the EAP information. Not because I needed it right then, but because she was right. Documentation helped. And maybe I did need someone to talk to about what my mother was doing. Aurora Mutual denied my mother's claim 2 weeks later. Their letter was formal and final: insufficient proof of death, evidence of fraud, claim rejected pending investigation. My mother didn't give up. Instead, she filed a petition in probate court for temporary letters of administration, trying to force the insurance company's hand by having a judge declare her entitled to handle my estate. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Department 4, 9 a.m. Carolyn called me immediately. "Ms. Quinn, she's escalating. We need you at that hearing. Our investigator will be there, our legal counsel will be there, and we need you to walk in very much alive." "I'll be there," I said. "Bring identification. Bring pay stubs showing continuous employment. Bring a recent photograph. Bring anything proving you've been living your normal life." I started assembling documents that night. Everything I'd collected over the past month, organized chronologically, highlighted and cross-referenced. My evidence binder grew thick with proof. The investigator from Aurora Mutual called to coordinate. Her name was Diana Torres, and her voice was calm and professional. "Here's the plan," she explained. "We appear with you. No drama. We let your mother present her case first. Then we present documentation. The judge will understand immediately." "What happens to my mom?" I asked again. Depends on the judge. False reports, fraudulent court filings, attempted insurance fraud. She's facing potential criminal charges and civil liability for investigation costs. Diana paused. But our primary goal is stopping the fraud, not punishing your mother. Documentation first, consequences second. The detective added himself to the call. Bring your ID, pay stubs, and that recent photo. I'll bring building footage and badge logs. We'll make this quick. I felt nausea and relief hitting at once. This would be over soon. But it meant facing my mother in court, in front of a judge, with everyone knowing what she'd tried to do. The night before the hearing, I lined my kitchen table with documents. Pay stubs from the past 3 months. My lease showing continuous residency. Utility bills in my name. Phone geolocation data I'd requested from my carrier. Badge access logs from work. Security camera stills from my building. My hands had been shaking for weeks, but that night they went steady. I was ready. I had proof of every single day, every single hour my mother claimed I'd been missing. My aunt texted at 10 p.m., "Your mother is suffering. She's embarrassed and scared. Can you please call her and work this out privately?" I stared at the message. My mother had filed false police reports, forged insurance claims, recruited friends to lie under oath, and contacted my employer with damaging lies. And I was supposed to protect her from the consequences? I put my phone face down on the table and went to bed. Some bridges weren't worth rebuilding. The courthouse hallway outside Department 4 was crowded with people waiting for various hearings. I stood near the back with Diana Torres and her legal team, watching my mother from a distance. She wore a fitted navy blazer and looked smaller than I remembered. 2 women flanked her, the friends who'd signed the matching affidavits. They were talking quietly, my mother nodding along with whatever they were saying. She looked nervous but determined. She looked like a grieving mother fighting for justice. She didn't see me standing 20 feet away, partially hidden behind Diana and the legal team. The bailiff's voice cut through the hallway noise. Case number 2024, PR 8847, Estate of Tessa Quinn, petition for temporary letters of administration. My mother straightened her jacket and walked toward the courtroom doors. Her friends followed. Diana touched my arm gently. "Ready?" I nodded. We walked in behind them. The judge was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the petition quickly while my mother stood at the petitioner's table. "State your relationship to the decedent," the judge instructed. "I'm her mother, Your Honor. Patricia Quinn. My daughter Tessa has been missing for over a month. The police investigation has found nothing. The insurance company is refusing to acknowledge reality and settle her policy. Someone needs authority to handle her affairs." My mother's voice caught. "I just want closure. The insurer is being cruel." The judge asked for supporting documents. My mother slid the police report and the old beneficiary form across the table. Diana stood. "Your Honor, if I may. I'm Diana Torres, Special Investigator for Aurora Mutual Insurance. We're opposing this petition." The judge looked up sharply. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that Ms. Tessa Quinn is not deceased or missing." Diana gestured toward me. "Your Honor, the alleged decedent is present in this courtroom." The courtroom went silent. I stepped forward into the open space before the judge's bench. Every eye in the room turned toward me. My mother's face went white, then red, then white again. "State your name for the record," the judge said, her voice carefully neutral. "Tessa Marie Quinn, Your Honor." I placed my driver's license on the rail. "I'm alive. I've never been missing. I've been living my normal life in my apartment, working my full-time job as a medical billing specialist." I placed documents on the rail one by one. Updated beneficiary confirmation showing I'd changed my designation last year. Employment verification from HR. 3 months of pay stubs. Badge access logs showing daily entry to my office building. Security footage stills from my apartment. The judge examined everything in silence. Then she looked at the matching affidavits from my mother's friends. "Counselor," she addressed Aurora Mutual's attorney, "explain these affidavits." Diana's fraud analyst stepped forward. "Your Honor, both statements contain identical template language. Metadata analysis shows both documents originated from the same computer on the same date. They appear to be coordinated false statements." The detective stepped forward next, adding building security footage to the evidence pile. "Your Honor, badge logs and video confirm Ms. Quinn entered her apartment building at 8:13 p.m. on November 24th, the night her mother claimed she disappeared. She signed for delivery packages on November 26th, November 29th, and December 2nd. She's been continuously present and accounted for." The judge turned to my mother. "Ms. Quinn, did you know your daughter updated her beneficiary designation last year?" My mother's lawyer started to speak, but she cut him off. "I thought the old policy was still active. I just wanted answers. Nobody would tell me anything. I needed closure." "Closure for what?" The judge's voice was sharp. "Your daughter is clearly alive and present." One of my mother's friends blurted out, "You said the policy would cover," then clamped her mouth shut, realizing what she'd admitted. The judge set down her pen with precise force. "I'm issuing an order to show cause regarding potential fraud and perjury. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's intake desk for review. And I'm immediately vacating the missing person flag on Ms. Quinn's records." My mother started crying. Not quiet tears, but loud, gasping sobs. I walked past my mother without stopping. She reached toward me, her hand grasping air, but I kept moving. Diana Torres was waiting near the courtroom doors. "Thank you for your documentation," Diana said quietly as we walked toward the elevator. "This ends faster because you were boring and thorough. Criminal cases fail when evidence gets emotional. Yours was all timestamps and receipts." I almost laughed. Boring and thorough. The story of my entire career. My mother's lawyer caught up with us in the hallway. "My client wants to speak with you." "Please." "No," I said simply. "She's going to file a motion to withdraw as counsel," he continued anyway. "She misrepresented facts to me. I can't continue the representation." "That's between you and her," I replied. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. Diana followed. The doors closed on my mother's lawyer still standing in the hallway. The cleanup took 2 weeks. The DMV cleared the missing person flag from my license. My bank restored account security alerts that had been frozen during the investigation. HR closed their wellness file with a neutral note that the situation had been resolved. I filed a USPS change of address hold to prevent my mother from attempting to forward my mail without authorization. Diana suggested it after finding that my mother had tried to redirect mail from my address to hers the week before the court hearing. Every detail mattered. Every small protection added up. I met with the EAP counselor my employer had recommended. She was kind and practical, helping me process what my mother had done without dramatizing it. "Setting boundaries isn't cruel," she said during our 3rd session. "Sometimes silence is a boundary, not a weapon." I held on to those words when my mother's voicemail started filling my phone. The first voicemail came 3 days after the hearing. "Tessa, please." They twisted everything I said. The insurance people made it sound worse than it was. I was just confused and scared. "Call me back." I didn't respond. Neither did I delete the voicemail. Documentation, always documentation. More messages followed. "You're my daughter. You can't just abandon me." Then, "I'm sorry if I handled things wrong." Then, "The lawyer bills are destroying me." My therapist's words echoed, "Silence can be a boundary." The church removed my name from the prayer bulletin the following Sunday. A neighbor who attended there texted me. They posted a note about miscommunication and giving thanks for resolution. No details. "Your mom looked humiliated." I felt nothing about that. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just tired recognition that consequences were landing where they belonged. The district attorney filed charges 6 weeks after the hearing. Misdemeanor false police report. Civil restitution claim for Aurora Mutual's investigation costs. The DA's letter outlined penalties, community service, fines, possible probation. Aurora Mutual issued a formal rescission letter regarding the old beneficiary designation my mother had tried to use. The letter stated clearly that the form had been submitted fraudulently in connection with a false missing person report and would not be honored under any circumstances. My mother's friends, the ones who'd signed the matching affidavits, were facing their own consequences. Potential perjury charges, though the DA indicated they might avoid prosecution if they testified truthfully about how my mother had convinced them to sign false statements. The court ordered community service hours and restitution payments. My mother would be paying Aurora Mutual back for their investigation costs on a monthly schedule for the next 2 years. I learned all of this through official notifications, not through family. Nobody in my family called to apologize or explain or take sides. They just went quiet, the way families do when embarrassment runs too deep for words. I updated my life insurance beneficiary designation one final time. Not to my grandmother this time, though she would have been honored. Instead, I designated the Care Access Grant, a small fund I'd helped establish through my employer. The fund paid for wound care supplies and medical transport vouchers for patients who couldn't afford them. Nothing dramatic or newsworthy. Just practical help for people who needed it. My manager approved matching funds from the company's charitable contribution program. The Care Access Grant doubled in size overnight. No press releases. No public announcements. Just a line on an insurance form, redirecting money towards something useful. It felt right. Better than leaving it to family who'd weaponize it or institutions that would absorb it into overhead costs. This way, the money would help specific people with specific needs. I filed the form with HR and kept a copy for myself, properly dated and documented. A month after the hearing, I walked past the courthouse on my way to lunch. The steps were full of people on their phones, having arguments, smoking cigarettes, living their various complicated lives. Department 4 was somewhere on the 3rd floor. I didn't look up at the windows. Didn't wonder if my mother was there for her sentencing hearing or case management conference or whatever came next in her legal process. I had lunch at a noodle shop 2 blocks away. Ordered my usual. Checked work emails on my phone while I waited for food. Lived my completely normal, completely ordinary life. My mother called that evening. I saw her name on the screen and let it go to voicemail. Didn't listen to the message. Deleted it unheard. Some conversations wouldn't help anyone. Some relationships couldn't be fixed by talking. Sometimes the kindest thing was simply to stop participating in someone else's chaos. I made tea and settled in with my laptop, processing the week's medical billing reports. The work was detailed and boring and exactly what I needed. 6 months after my mother reported me missing, I was sitting in my apartment on a Sunday morning, drinking coffee and reviewing my budget spreadsheet. Rent was paid. Utilities were current. My emergency fund was growing steadily. The Care Access Grant had helped 43 patients since I'd updated my beneficiary designation. Small amounts for each person, enough to cover a month of wound care supplies or 3 weeks of transport to dialysis appointments. Nothing transformative, just practical help when people needed it. My grandmother called to check on me. She was the only family member I still spoke to regularly. "Your mother's completing her community service hours," she mentioned carefully. "She's been assigned to the food bank." "That's good," I said neutrally. "She asks about you." "I'm sure she does." My grandmother sighed. "You're allowed to be done, sweetheart. Some people write endings to our stories without asking us. The only power we have is showing up with the pages they forgot." "What pages?" I asked. "The ones with dates and times and your name spelled correctly. The boring ones. The true ones." I thought about my evidence binder, the timestamps and badge logs and security footage. The documentation that had saved me from becoming a ghost in my mother's fiction. I kept good records, I said. You did, my grandmother agreed. That's why you're drinking coffee in your apartment instead of being declared dead in probate court. We talked about other things after that. Her garden. My work. The normal, ordinary details of normal, ordinary lives. When we hung up, I opened my laptop and checked my calendar. Another completely unremarkable week ahead. Work, gym, groceries, laundry. Living my life with no drama, no crisis, no one trying to erase me for insurance money. Boring and thorough, Diana Torres had called me. The fraud investigator's highest compliment. I'd take it. Boring meant alive. Thorough meant protected. And sometimes, that was all the victory anyone needed.